What's up, guys? How you doing? Love ya. And I'm back. It's been a long time. Been a really long time. Been doing a lot of stuff. And anyway, found this video. I thought, hey, might make a good reaction. Haven't watched it yet. I'd be curious. I believe this guy's a Brit. But let's see what he says.
It feels like you're living the dream while also escaping the feds. Hello, I'm Lawrence. I'm from Britain and I live in the United States, and anybody that's seen my channel before will know that I absolutely love living here. Now don't
Noise. Finally, some positivity.
get me wrong, I do have feelings about the things that America doesn't do quite so well, just as I'm aware of Britain's shortcomings. But
Sure.
I'm an optimist, and amid all of the criticisms
Great.
that might be thrown at America, I often think it's important to remind myself of the things that America does well. I think amid the pandemic of the last 2 years and this sort of political division that's engulfed the country, it can be easy for us to lose sight of those details, those things that have made my stay in the United States an enjoyable one. So I'm going to outline some of them right here, right now, so that you can share this video from now until the end of time.
Great.
Here are 7 things that the United States of America does really well. Yes, it's a little bit of a cliche because, everybody loves pizza. Even back in Britain, we like pizza, just not as much as we do in America. I lived in Britain for 26 years, I've lived in America for 14, and I've probably had 100 times more pizzas since moving here.
That's surprising. I didn't know that. I mean, Americans do love pizza. It's a big thing, but I feel like if you say that to some people, they'd be like, that's not American, it's Italian. It's like, yeah, that's true. It's 100% true. But some cultures or countries take something and they kind of make it their own. Make it in a certain way, or it becomes a part of the culture in a certain way. So that's an interesting point that he brings up. I didn't know it was such a difference compared with England and the US in terms of pizza, but makes sense. I'd say the average American eats pizza like twice a month. Let's say between 2 and 5 times a month, something like that. Some people eat it like every other day, so yeah.
And on the whole, America does them really well. I'm sure the Italians won't thank me for saying that.
There it is, yeah.
And I'll caveat that by saying,
hey, listen, here's the thing. Like I said, people kind of take things and they make it their own, There's a lot of dishes, I'm not going to name them off the top of my head, but I've seen people talk about like, oh, this dish you think is from here, but is actually originally started in this place. So it's like, everybody can be happy. It doesn't have to be, this is my thing, we can all share and be happy, and we can just make it our own thing, and it doesn't, nobody owns pizza, nobody has a copyright for pizza, so, or ice cream, or whatever, it's just like, I wouldn't condone something like, if you took a super traditional dish of one country and you just copy and pasted it and be like, this is ours, or this is our thing. Okay, of course not, I wouldn't. But if you put your own spin on it, like I've had pizza in Italy, and it is a little different. You can see some difference. Now, there's just so many pizza makers and types. If you told me it was from America, I probably wouldn't question it. But just overall, I don't know. We don't veer crazy far on the average pizza in America. Like the average is kind of similar to Italian pizza, whereas like I've had pizza in Brazil, and that's very different. Pizza in China, and that's very different. In my opinion, not good. But the Brazilian pizza is very good, but it's really different. They don't cook it as much. It's a little softer. They use a little bit more bread. They have a bunch of different types of toppings like that we don't usually often put chicken on, and that's not so common in the U.S. It's getting more common, but like sausage, pepperoni, or cheese pizza, sometimes margarita pizza, and sometimes like veggie. Those are like the biggest like 5 flavors. Yeah, but it's not like a huge amount of variation. But there are specialty places where you go, and they make it all like crazy flavors and stuff. It's like macaroni and cheese flavored pizza and stuff like that. Anyway, I don't want to make it too long about pizza. I don't want to bore people, but I think it's an interesting point he brings up. Just brings a lot of thoughts to my head about, yeah, it's stuff that I said.
I do also love Italian pizza. I just love pizza in general. That's sort of a rule, isn't it? But America has many different styles, and of course, I live in Chicago, so I am living in the place.
Oh, deep dish pizza, super popular. He's probably going to say that right now, but yeah.
Where one of its most famous pizzas was born. And if I'm in the mood and I haven't eaten in 3 days, a Chicago deep dish pizza is amazing. But, and this is the reason that I don't go out onto the streets of Chicago anymore, I actually prefer the Detroit style. I know, because the thing is with Detroit style, it's like Hufflepuff. You know, everybody thinks they're either Gryffindor or Slytherin, but I'm a contrarian by nature, so I always like to go for the third option. For me, it's not New York style or Chicago, it's Detroit.
I don't even know what Detroit style is, so that I'd be curious to try that. It shows how big America is and how many different things there are, and that could be a whole nother tangent in and of itself. But I don't know. I guess to just finish off the point, I think I'm happy to hear that he likes the pizza here, and I think it's it's good because we have a lot of our own kind of take on pizza.
I promise that not all of my answers are about food, but
I'm sorry to stop the video so much. I know it annoys some people, but I just want to say this: like Ed Sheeran was just had a lawsuit where he was sued because he played like 4 chords, and they're like, oh, this 4 chords were played before, and it's like, yeah, you can't be like own something that's just so huge. You can't. There's so many 4 chords or 3 chords that are played in a million popular songs. If somebody owns that forever, then it's like, well, it's there has to be like building blocks to put things upon. And if somebody owns one of the building blocks, if you happen to be one of the earlier societies, you had a much more of an opportunity to find those building blocks. So maybe another society would have found those at some point on their own, but we just don't know because this earlier society found it first, and so since they were the first ones, then they can claim it as their own. Does that make any sense? I hope so.
I felt like I had to include this one. Not many things beat the feeling of waking up on a Sunday morning and making that decision to go to your local diner and have breakfast. For me, there's just a significant amount of warmth that comes with an American diner. You know, it's the early morning chatter, it's the pour of the coffee, it's the omelettes and the hash browns, it's the seating booth, it's all of it. I mean, it just makes up for such a great atmosphere. And, we do have, of course, cafeterias and things like that back in Britain, but we don't really have anything that's precisely the same as an American diner, which is sort of a shame because they also remind me of adventure, right? I always think of 2 film characters meeting in secret to plot the overthrow of the villain who's come to annihilate the city. I mean, that's why I go to diners.
That's really interesting. I don't like diners really, but I guess it's just because I guess I wasn't raised around that many. I think there's more. There's definitely more in certain areas, and especially like the old style diner. I guess I just didn't go to much when I was a kid, and I don't know. I think it's nice. I guess it's nice. Yeah, it's just something I wouldn't have thought of much, but it's interesting to hear him say that.
Streets. This might seem like a weird answer, especially since, of course, we have streets in Britain. And to some extent, I miss the streets in Britain. There's character to the winding nature of them, and you can very much get lost just looking for the post office. Here, it feels like you're less likely to do that, and the orderly side of my brain appreciates that.
That's so funny because my British friend said the exact opposite thing. He said it's easy to know he felt like it was easy to know where he was in somewhere like London because the roads are unique, whereas in America it's generally a grid system, in at least in major cities and even in smaller cities usually. But yeah, I mean, now we have Google Maps, so it's not a problem for anybody. But if you know how it works, they're often numbered, or it'll be like, I don't know. I guess in my brain it's easier also, the grids. But anyway.
Streets, firstly, of course, are laid out usually in blocks, so you have kind of rectangular streets. This is very much in line with my observations of America's fascination with rectangles. But it's not just that.
That's the kind of car I have.
Right? It's the things that are on the street. Those fire hydrants that you see in the movies, it turns out they're real. And the house numbers seem...
It turns out they're real. That's funny to think that someone might not think of them as real.
To go on forever. It almost seemed peculiar back in Britain if the house number went into 4 digits. I don't know that I've had an American address that's had fewer than 3. Are there any Americans that live in...
That's interesting. Huh. It happens. You can have one for your address.
Number 4, Washington Street. Oh, and streets as well. They're all named after presidents.
Actually, it's funny he says that because I know there's a lot of like major locations in New York that is just in like 2 digits or even, I believe, in 1, possibly. Anyway.
Or places in America, or types of tree. And I just love that continuity. I love saying things like, I'll meet you on the corner of Maplewood and Jefferson in 5. And there are always...
That is amazing. I never would have thought of that. That would be an interesting thing, but I'm glad he likes it. I guess it's good.
People walking their dogs on these streets, and they're usually super polite, and they'll look you in the eye and say, "Good morning. It's afternoon."
Come on, everybody makes mistakes. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Aren't people kind of polite in England, like friendly? I would think so.
Really couldn't have made this list without including entertainment. I mean, obviously that's quite a broad term, but I think in general terms, very few countries do entertainment like the United States. Firstly, I mean, America produces so much entertainment. You could be talking about music, television, film, and in each of those, there's just such a vast array of output. Now, don't get me wrong, some of it's crap, but when they get it right, which historically has been...
Isn't that the truth?
And often, you end up with The Wizard of Oz, you end up with Star Wars, you end up with the Marvel franchise, Quantum Leap. I could go on.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that I don't care much for, but obviously it's super popular and a lot of people like, so great, yeah.
Wrestling. You know, I thought...
Wrestling? Wrestling? Wrestling. Okay, alright.
About including this under entertainment, but it seems as though theme parks deserve their own entry. That was a pun on entering a theme park. Now, over the years, Britain has had its fair share of theme parks, from Alton Towers to Flamingo Land to the M25, but America just has more of them. And of course, I think everybody knows about Disneyland and Disney World and Universal Studios and all of that. But after moving here, I realised, much to my intense happiness, that theme parks aren't just reserved for Florida and California, but can actually be found in many states. I think the first one I went to was Kings Island, just outside of Cincinnati. And I also went to Holiday World in Santa Claus, Indiana, and yes, that's a real place. And the strange thing is, I didn't go on many of the roller coasters because I have this overwhelming feeling that we're going to crash. So you might be thinking, what do you even get out of theme parks? And to me, it's the atmosphere. It's the balloons, it's the movie scores that play throughout the entire place. It's the hot summer days, you know, it's the interns dressed in a Yogi Bear costume. Come to think of it, that must be hell in July. But for the rest of us, it's great to meet Yogi and friends.
It's interesting he says that because, in my opinion, one of the best is not far from, I think, where he is in Chicago. I think he said that. Anyway, there's Six Flags. It's quite good. Water parks are really big in my state, Wisconsin. We have the biggest, I believe, the biggest water park, Noah's Ark. And there's a place where there's a bunch of water parks called Wisconsin Dells. Anyway, let's continue.
People who watch this channel regularly know that I absolutely love parks, partly for the opposite reason that I love theme parks, which now that I've said that out loud, I've just realised that theme parks are themselves parks. Anyway, the point is, it's the relative absence of people that makes them so enjoyable. This was even the case for me when I lived in Britain, where we have a boatload of parks, some of which have boats. But just like with theme parks, America has way more of them, and some of them are absolutely massive. There's one in Alaska that is larger than Northern Ireland and Wales combined. In fact, back in the day,
Whoa! That's pretty wild.
did a video about US national parks that absolutely dwarf their UK equivalents. I'll link to that at the end of this video. And there's sort of a hierarchy of parks here as well. You've got the sort of local municipal parks, you've got state parks, you've got national parks. Spoiled for choice because the United States is made up of a very diverse terrain. So you've got the hot springs at Yellowstone National Park, you've got the tree-laden mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park, you've got the Grand Canyon and just 100 million other places. That is an exaggeration. But there's a lot of them. And of course, you could fly to these places, although not directly. You'd have to go to an airport. But really, let's be honest, does that beat a good old American road trip? I don't think so. I love the open road in the US, and some of that comes from the movies. Again, it's just like with the diner. It feels like you're living the dream while also escaping the feds. And you just stick on Billy Joel or something cool, you wind down the window, and you just hit the gas, man. Not the gas man, you hit the gas, man. It's amazing. And that open road, of course, really is open and long, with some highways spanning the entire country. And you see things on these journeys that you don't see from the air, and you certainly wouldn't see in Britain, like quirky roadside attractions, especially when you're on a historic route.
Everywhere there's like weird things. Okay, it's a bit of an exaggeration, but if you look up like some attraction in some place, they probably have something weird, some quirky thing.
Or the terrain that I just spoke about. And taking road trips in Britain was never quite the same thing, because firstly, the country is nowhere near as big, and secondly, in the UK, you can get to most towns and cities by train, which is equally adventurous, but you can't really do that for the most part in America, because there isn't high-speed rail. That's an example of something it doesn't do too well, so I've learned to embrace one of the things that it does, and that's road trips. That is it for this episode. Let me know.
Cool. Shout out to this guy. Check out his channel. Seems like a good guy. Lost in the Pond, I believe it's called. And yeah, it was cool to hear. The last two things, the parks and the roads, if you grow up here, you're so used to it, you don't really, it's not really a thought. You don't even realize. I mean, you know the world is different, but you're so accustomed to it, you don't think of it as being unique in any way. Yeah, I guess that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any other video recommendations for me to react to, let me know. And might try to make some more stuff soon. Yeah, thanks. Have a good one. Love ya. If you would comment and subscribe and like, appreciate it. Take care. Have a good one. God bless.